Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to do the 10 stitch blanket. And what that is a blanket where the entire thing is done using only 10 pegs of a loom. It's a wonderful blanket. It comes out very nicely. I don't know how well you can see that, but this is one I have that's a work in progress. And if you're wondering, this is just the adjuster piece for an all-in-one loom. Okay, so we use an E-wrap cast on. If you're unfamiliar with the E-wrap cast on, I do have a video to show you how to do that, so I'm actually going to do this very quickly. And you're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I went one too many. Using 10 pegs. I absolutely love this design because I find it very easy to carry on me because it's a small loom. I can put it in my knitting bag and just go, and I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so we got your cast on. Now, the stitch I am using to do this blanket is a garter stitch. What a garter stitch is you E-wrap a row. This first row after my cast on, I am E-wrapping. Oh, sorry. And then your next row, you will do a purl stitch. Now, if you're I'm going to kind of go through it fast just so you can get an idea of what I'm doing here. If you are unfamiliar with a purl stitch, I do have a video to show you how to do that as well. But for the time being, I'm going to try to show you on here quickly. There's quite a bit there's a few steps to this blanket. They're not hard. I just want to try to get all of this in one video and not make it too long. So some of the steps I'll be like, you might want to refer to another video to help you along with that. But what I'm doing now is a purl stitch for a row. Oops. Drop that one. There we go. Alright, so what we just did was our cast on. Our first row was an E-wrap, our second row was a purl stitch, and then our third row will be an E-wrap again. And that's how you do this blanket. That is the stitch pattern you use for this blanket. You just go back and forth from purl stitch to E-wrap. It's called a garter stitch. And it gives kind of, I like to say, a fuller stitch look. It doesn't curl on you at all. And it's a nice stretchy stitch. And it's pretty light. Some other videos you'll notice actually use a flat stitch instead of an E-wrap. If you use an E-wrap stitch, your product will be about double the size of using a flat stitch, and it knits a lot faster. So that's one reason I use this stitch, just because I'm working on it. I'm seeing more progress a lot faster, so it's keeping me really inspired to keep going with this blanket. Now, where we start with this blanket, you actually start. Oh, I'm holding this backwards. No, I'm not. You're actually starting in the very middle of this blanket. On mine, it's kind of like a rectangle. So this is what we're starting with. We just cast on here. We just did a couple rows, and as you go, you're moving up to this first corner. Now, here is where you decide the shape of your blanket. If you want your blanket to be square, you want to do 18 rows, and it's going to look really small when you do it. But it will stretch out some as you go. But you want to do 18 rows or 9 sets. A set is 1 E-wrap row and 1 purl row. So either way, obviously if you want to do a rectangle, you double that. You do at least 18 to 20 sets. Honestly, I don't remember which I went with this one. I think I did 18 sets. So let's say, alright, get all this untangled. Let's say you've got your 9 or your 18, whatever you're going with. It's going to look something like this. This is if you use a worsted weight yarn on this specific loom. It's going to be very airy. If you're going to use this gauge loom, I would actually use a chunky or a bulky yarn to do your blanket. But it's really up to you. You might want a light, airy blanket. Now, so we've got our first piece done. What we need to do now, which I'll show you on the blanket so you can kind of see what we are doing. Okay, so we got, where's my middle? Okay, we've got our middle square done. Now we need to get it to turn the corner. We got to get it to turn the corner 2 times to where we can go up this way. So the corner is done in 2 parts. There's part 1 and part 2. Part 1 of your corner, what you do is, okay, we're on a purl row, so I'm going to purl all the way down to the end. Again, I can't really see on my camera how good this is showing, so I hope you guys can see this okay. Alright, so we purl down to peg 9. You do not purl peg 10. What we're going to do is actually going to be shrinking the rows, or I forget what it's called. Okay, peg 10. What I just did is I lifted the stitch off of peg 10. I'm putting my working yarn behind peg 10. I'm putting that stitch back on. Alright, so if you got that, you lift up peg 10, put the working yarn behind it so it's coming around the front. Okay, so I'm on an E-wrap row now. So I E-wrap all the way up, and you knit off. You only knit to peg 9. Peg 10 you've already turned the corner on, so you do not knit that one off. And what we're going to do is go up and down that same thing. Now this one's done. We're going to purl down to peg 8 instead of peg 9. So there's peg 2, peg 3, peg 4, peg 5, peg 6, 7, and peg 8. Okay, so here we are at peg 9. Peg 10's already done. So we lift the stitch off peg 9, put the yarn behind the peg, and put that stitch back on. And now we wrap around the front of peg 9, and then we E-wrap all the way back up to peg 1. Alright, and that's actually the end of my yarn I cut out. So this is what we do back and forth until we get to peg 2. When you get to peg 2, you know, you lift it off, pull the yarn behind, and you E-wrap peg 1. When you're done with that, this is what your corner 1 is going to look like. This only has the corner on it. You're going to notice you're going to notice that the product is starting to angle down. This right here is where your working piece, that rectangle you originally did, would be coming out. So it's going to start angling. It's going to start looking a little odd, but you're doing great. That's how you want it to look. Alright, now that is called corner part 1. What you just did was, of this corner, you just did this first triangle. Now we need to do the second triangle. How we do that? It's pretty simple. You are just adding rows now. Okay, so most of these rows, except for peg 1, the rest of these are going to have 2 stitches on them. You treat those as 1 stitch. So you go to peg 2, you purl, pull both stitches up, pull your yarn under and purl. Now you go back to peg 1 and E-wrap. You knit that off, then you go to peg 2 and purl it, and then you purl peg 3. See, each time you're just adding 1 peg. You go back to peg 2, you E-wrap, go back to peg 1, you E-wrap. And that is how you increase your rows. And you do this all the way down to peg 10. So your next time down, I'm out of my yarn, so I'll just tell you. Your next time down, you're going to purl peg 2, peg 3, and peg 4. Then you'll come back, E-wrap peg 3, 2, and 1. Then you'll purl down to peg 5, E-wrap back up, purl down to peg 6, E-wrap back up, purl down, you get the idea. You do that until you get to peg 10, and then you E-wrap back up, and then that is your corner part 2. Now this is one thing that keeps confusing people. What you just did, if you're pausing this and working along or anything, what you've just done is you've just done your middle piece, whether it's square or rectangle. You've done your corner part 1 and your corner part 2. So essentially you've done like this huge rectangle. That's basically what you've done, is just this huge rectangle right here. Now we need to be able to turn this corner and then go up the side and just keep going. Because if you go on with the pattern from here without doing the corner again, it's going to screw up. So what you do is you do your main part, then you do your corner part 1, your corner part 2, then you do your corner part 1 and your corner part 2 again. And that is the only time in this whole pattern that you repeat both those corners. So once you get to that and you get both corners, you're going to have kind of like a 7 or an L. Okay. Now we need to do, after we've got our main part in both our corner 1, 2, corner 1, 2, we need to be able to go down the side with it being hooked to it. And how we do that is, well, if you look, you will see there are loops all along the edge. There's a loop, there's a loop, there's a loop, there's a loop. I hope this is focusing in on that. But all along the side, there are loops. When you pick up your working piece, you're going to see that there will be loops. You pick up the first loop you see, hook it to the peg, then you continue on with your pattern. Of course, this is a purl, so I'm halfway down the road, but we purl all the way down. And I did watch the first part of this video already, and I saw that my shoulder keeps getting in the way, so I plan on trying to redo it, but I'm almost done with this video, so I'm going to just keep going and then maybe get a chance to redo it later to where it's a better visual. Okay, this last peg here, you're going to see there's 2 loops on it. Treat those as 1. And you purl and take that off. And then, let me find my yarn guide here. Then you go back, you just do everything as normal. You E-wrap, oops, E-wrap all the way down. And then you knit all those off. Now every other row is when you'll be picking up a stitch. You don't pick it up every row, so you E-wrap a row, purl a row, pick up a stitch, then I'll purl this row, then I'll E-wrap, then I'll pick up a stitch, and that's what you do until you get, you can see this one, I'm almost at the corner, but you do that until you get to your corner. And it took me a little while to realize how to, exactly where to go on my corner. What you need to do is follow your seam all the way up, and you'll notice at the edge there will be one stitch kind of going into the seam and one kind of going out. So your last loop you want to pull will be that one going into the seam. Then you're going to do your corner part 1, corner part 2, then you'll pull up the one coming out of the seam, and then you'll just go until you get to the next corner. And this is really all there is to this blanket. Now your cast off, a good cast off to do with this blanket is the stretchy sewn cast off. Or you could do your basic bind off. The basic bind off it'll look just like this, but it won't be quite as stretchy. Let me show you where. Okay, here's where I did it on. I used the basic bind off on this one. You can see it's not very stretchy. And if you want it to match, you want to do your sewn stretchy cast off. And I don't really think I have enough time to show you how to do that on here. If you don't know how to do it, I do have a video to show you. But that's basically all there is to it. One more thing I wanted to show you was the difference in size by changing your stitches. Okay, on this one, I have my main piece, my corner, I go up, over, and down. So this square, this little rectangle right here is the exact same as this. So as you can see, it's double the size. And the only difference is this one I used a flat stitch, and then your Purl Stitch, flat stitch, Purl Stitch all the way through it. This one is E-wrap Purl Stitch, your regular Garter Stitch. And it's going to be a lot lighter because I'm using a lot less yarn. Some people, if you want a real thick warm blanket, this is the stitch you're going to do. Or if you're using a thinner yarn with a bigger gauge loom, this is what you'll want to use. So I really hope this was helpful. I I know there's a lot of visual issues with this video, but I do hope to get a chance to fix that. Any questions, please let me know. Thank you.